to the IREN Growthpad Virtual Food Festival for those who are just joining us this time. And this session is on the state of food security and nutrition in Kenya. And it shall be deliberating on the progress of having zero hunger in Kenya and affordable diets for all, for the Kenyan people. And also we shall be looking at the goals to achieving, the plans, the strategies to achieving these goals in the country. And moderating this session is our very own Topista Nabusoba, who is a broadcast journalist here in Kenya. Topista, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Esperance. It's a pleasure to join this, to be part of this discussion on having food security in our country. And this, I think, COVID-19 has put us in a difficult situation, but it has also compelled us to have innovative ways of getting around the disruptions to food security. And we know that because of the restrictions that the government put in place to control the spread of the coronavirus, farmers were not able to move their produce freely, and therefore the markets were not able to get the food in good time, and therefore the disruption we could see was very high, and that therefore also interfered with the nutrition, and that led to high prices for some foodstuffs. And the rural communities were mainly also affected because therefore then they could not move their goods because of the restriction on movement. And therefore this afternoon we are glad to have our presenters, and this is, I think, the 5th session for this day, this first day of the conference. So Bila Nandi is a food security scientist nutrition, and she's also a lecturer at Bukura Agricultural Training College. We shall also be having Justine Mutobera, the director of SAIPE. SAIPE, I think, is quite a mouthful, and she will exactly tell us what exactly SAIPE is, and later we'll be listening to Purity Kamande, who is a student, a master's student in nutrition at the Masinde Muliro University. And the issues that we therefore shall be looking at this afternoon, as the 3 speakers delve into this subject, are how we shall deliver affordable diets for all, given the challenges that are facing in the country today and even globally, and what therefore will be the way forward towards the zero hunger. We already had Esperance gave us that in the introduction. And we also shall be looking at what the sustainable ways are for food security in this country. So first and foremost, Bilha Nandi, please, the floor is yours.
Madam Topista, good to meet you online though.
Yes.
I appreciate, we have really had a challenge with COVID-19. I think I don't need to introduce myself because I've already been introduced. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
All right. All right. So looking at the issue of food security and nutrition, the status of food security and nutrition in Kenya, I will focus on Kenya because now we have a wide range of countries which have been affected by COVID-19. Food security is a critical aspect that focuses on all people at all times having physical and economic access to sufficient and preferences for an active, healthy life. Now, food security has posed a great challenge to Kenyans, especially in the wake of COVID-19, because not all people at all times have had physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, because some people were displaced in terms of the flooding that took place during this COVID-19 season. And therefore, you find that it has really posed a great challenge on the part of providing food for country at large. So food insecurity, on the other hand, is actually the failure of provision of this food, be able to access this very food to the households. Now, we have a few aspects on food security, which are adequate food. Does the food that is available, is it sufficient? Does it fit, or does it get satisfaction to the weighing the food? We also have aspects of food access. Is there physical access to food? Is the food available physically? Is the food accessible to the people physically, socially, in the sense of where they are housed, where they're household? Is this food that we have, whether there's sunshine, whether there's drought, stability? Now, this has posed a great challenge to the many people first in Kenya and to the global perspective. And we know that probably this has affected the nutritional status of people, because what you eat comes from what you have acquired as a person. Now, based on the acquisition, we have various aspects like the factors of production. Have people been able to produce food and be able to make it available to consume it? And convert it to handouts from weather organizations or even relatives to be able to survive. So these aspects together have really been shaken by the shocks of COVID-19, the shocks of losing livelihoods and other aspects, adverse weather conditions. Kenya have really been, you'd think that by March, mid-March, we have rainfall patterns have changed, climate change has occurred, and therefore this has really deranged or derailed the people who are producing food and even they that are consuming, so that you cannot think of a given season for a given food item. Now, on matters nutrition, we moved a bit up until 2014-15 when the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey was conducted, in the sense that especially for the vulnerable groups who are the under fives, who are our state starter team, because our nutrition is not just about us as adults. It starts way back to the time we are conceived, on to when we have been born, on to even when we are fed, breastfed first, and then breastfed as well as fed, and then we proceed up to the childhood, teenagehood, and then adulthood. I may not have time enough to go through all that, but maybe just looking at the data that may have come from our KDHS, Kenya Demographic and Health Survey, we find that wasting levels have improved from what has been there in the previous year. In the previous year, we had 4%. Actually, it remained 4% of those who are wasted, and those who are severely wasted were 1%, and that is exactly how it was. However, counties like Turkana have had very high levels of wasting, 23%, whereas Siaya and Kisumu have had less than 1%. Looking at trends in underweight, in the past, we have had quite a high number of children who are under 5 and are underweight. But in 2014 or 2015 time, the underweight levels were 11%, whereas the severe, those who are in a bad shape, were 2% countrywide. And our boys were having higher levels of underweight than the girls at 10%. The boys were 12, the girls were 10. Now in rural areas, they were also higher at 13%, other than those in urban areas at 7%. And then there were more than 25% of children who were underweight in counties like Marsabit, Turkana, West Pokot, and Samburu, whereas in Nyeri, we had less than 4%, which was less than the average for the whole country. Now, looking at the status of stunting, in 2015, 26% of our children are stunted, which is very not very good for us. because that is quite a high number. And this is greatly attributed to the way we feed our children from the age of 6 months to 23 months when they start off after breastfeeding. However, those who are severely stunted, that is having a problem or less than what is expected in terms of height for their age, there were 8%, that which was in 2008. So looking at those statistics, then it gives us a challenge on what we feed ourselves as a country, what we feed ourselves as households, what we feed ourselves as children who have been born and then they have been introduced to breastfeeding and thereafter complementary feeding. And this is quite critical for us to ensure that we are giving what is best. Now, basing on the aspects that we have just made mention right a short while ago concerning sustainable ways, how we can deliver affordable health diets for all, we may say that it's important for us to look at various aspects. For example, we should look at whether we are having adequate food. I think I mentioned that as one of the dimensions of food security. Whether we are giving adequate food to all the people consuming, whether the food we are giving is safe and clean, during including water and fluids. Are we giving food that is clean? And that has been a challenge even during these times when there are many floods and people being displaced and do not have where to be habitated. Then we have issues of consistent guidelines to reduce the risks of diet-related non-communicable diseases. Are we consistent with WHO guidelines? Do we contain minimal or no levels of possible pathogens in our foods or toxins? Because sometimes we may have food which is in plenty, right, but it may not be clean for us to consume, and that actually affects our state of health when it comes to nutrition. We also have things to do with the maintaining gas, the emission of gases during greenhouse management and upbringing of foods, because that's a new technology which has come, but are we managing that gas so that we are not allowing chemicals and other substances to affect what we consume? Then the livestock, apart from what we eat rare, are we able to maintain them so that they cannot have chemicals within them? Because there are times we feed them with or spray chemicals that are toxic to our consumption, and that affects the state of health of people. Then are we also using minimum hormones or antibiotics in food production? Are we able to minimize the use of plastic and other derivatives in packaging our food? Because plastics have been discouraged both by NEMA and other international organizations, but yet we are still using these things and keeping our food in them, and that may adversely affect the kind of food we are consuming. Then we have reduced loss and wastes. Do you keep what is enough for everyone so that whatever is in excesses is not wasted? However, it should be utilized by members of the household. That is very critical so that we do not lose out among many other points. Then we need also to start early in life on feeding people so that now when a child has been born, they need to be breastfed. That is what WHO recommends, that they may be breastfed for the first 6 months of life, after which they should not stop breastfeeding, however, to complementary feeds. Stop the breastfeeding, start the complementary foods. But we are saying that we need to complement. Breastfeeding may continue because it has many advantages, and they gradually continue to take the other solid foods, semi-solid, then solid, so that as they grow, they continue breastfeeding up to around 2 years of age. Then we also need to have a variety of unprocessed foods because many people prefer taking processed foods, and that is where now we find our nutrition status being compromised because we are consuming them and causing lifestyle diseases like the diabetes and other lifestyle diseases. So we should, if we have the ugali, for example, which is the Kenyan staple, we prefer that you take the whole maize, grind it, use it for your ugali. There you're getting all the nutrients, unlike the processed or refined flour, which may be deficient of some minerals like phosphorus, some nutrients like the roughage, even that which is very necessary for us when we are having our digestion taking place. The 4 of the 7 food groups are most preferred for children, from the root and tubers, flesh, other fruits and vegetables that are not vitamin A rich, then the legumes, nuts, and dairy products, as well as eggs. So if this person is taking a variety of these foods right from childhood, even to adulthood, there is an amount that is required for us to consume to be termed as being healthy for the women and for the men, because we have different nutrition needs. Then you also need to include whole grain foods in our meals, and also include moderate amounts of eggs and dairy products and fish in small amounts. Now, if we are able to do all these things, then we are going to live a better, in a better state. We are going to actually be in a better nutrition status, because we are observing it right from the time this mother has conceived. She is feeding well. When she delivers, her baby is taken well care of. The child continues to grow eating what is right. And even as they grow into adulthood, because the most vulnerable groups especially are the children. And if you look at even the KDHs, most of the information has been dwelt upon the children, because they are the most vulnerable. They do not choose what to eat. They are given what to eat. And those are the ones who mostly may determine whether a population is in the right state in terms of nutrition status or not. So I believe the state of Kenya in food security, unless maybe the other panelists will be chipping in. Madam Topista, may I continue? Hello, Madam Topista.
I can hear you, but I think there's a network issue. Okay. Because there are times when I couldn't hear you. I don't know whether that's the case with everybody else. But thank you very much, Bilha, for that presentation. Before we move on to the next presenter, I just wanted to find out, because the data on stunting is 2014 data. Now,
yes.
What do we envisage the levels of stunting will be, particularly looking at the period that we are in for this COVID-19? Do we have any, like projections on what the stunting levels would be when we get the data eventually?
Projections have yet to be made. However, we may say that because many who are providing for these very children in the age of under 5 have been affected in terms of their livelihoods, and people have lost jobs. People have been displaced by floods. I think you saw that in areas like West Pokot. Today we saw that there were floods in such places. You may find that it will greatly affect the health of our children, and this may probably drop down, because I believe this is the year that they should be actually producing another data of the same. But let us wait and see, because the prevailing circumstances actually show that they may be a problem. However, once the data is actually concretely taken, it can give us a better view. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bilha. If we have any questions, I would like to ask members, participants to put them on the chat. We pack them for later. So we'll move on to the next speaker, Justine Mutobera. Do we have Justine?
Yeah, Justin is here.
Yeah, Justin, thank you.
Good afternoon. Are you getting me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, as I've been introduced, I'm Justin Mtobera. I work for an NGO called SAIPE. It's an NGO based in Western Kenya. We work in agriculture, education, health, and advocacy. Now, I want to thank my colleague Bilha for her presentation. And in her definition of food security, it's very clear there are certain things that are always necessary for a country to call itself food secure. And there are issues of availability, accessibility, and affordability by all people. And if you look at the issues of food security, it starts at production, where now we have the farmers, we have the people who provide the seeds and all that. Then we have processing and manufacturing, and we have the sales and those who buy. So with the onset of COVID-19, we have seen that this food chain has been disrupted. There are people who had food, but they would not get food to the market. There are those who wanted food, they had the money, but they would not get the food. There are those who depend mainly on those who provide, who produce food. But because they lost their livelihoods, they lost their jobs, they would not get food. So in this period, the food security was disrupted. We have seen, and then there came the floods. So we saw also again quite a number of people going hungry. And what is also funny, especially about our country, is that there are some parts of the country that produce enough to the extent that those farmers are complaining about not getting people to buy, while at the same time there are parts of this country complaining about food. So it is very hard sometimes to even say whether we are food secure or not because of these disparities on the product. And production we saw. Initially, the government was giving subsidized feed, subsidized fertilizers, subsidized seeds and other farm inputs. But I think that this time around, it did not work, especially for national government. The fertilizer didn't come on time. So that already affects the production. We have seen, and as I have said before, that quite a number of people lost jobs. Those who are doing businesses, their businesses were not doing well. They are up to now, businesses are struggling. And you know, if you have someone who is producing and someone else is not producing, the person who is not producing must have the purchasing power. So quite a number of people lost their purchasing power. So I would say that the food security as we speak is shaky. National strategic reserve. So, you know, when the government is arguing against itself, sometimes you are unable to really say whether we are food secure or not. And but as of now, we can confidently say that because of also of the patterns, climate change, that quite a number of people did not manage to plant on time. Others who planted did not have the requisite farm inputs. So you expect that the production this season might go down. And if that will be the case, then definitely going forward, we might really have a problem in supply. The government has very good policies. So I would now wish to look at what should the government and us do to really ensure that we have a sustainable food supply and nutrition, because all this starts with production. And we have the supply related issues. And in supply related issues, it is important that the government continues to subsidize farm inputs, especially fertilizer and seeds. And these seeds should be quality seeds. It's important that the government, and we have this institute, the CALRO, should strengthen the research and extension services on the ground, because research will give us good quality seeds. It will give us drought-resistant seeds. The research will also be able to give some of the solutions to the pests and pesticides. So that should be strengthened. And there's also need to provide credit to the rural farmers. The rural farmers need to access credit. Of course, we know there is this Kilimo Biashara. It should be spread to the lower parts or the rural parts of the country. And there is need to strengthen the irrigation system, because we also know that there are some parts of this country with huge tracts of land, but they are not favored in terms of the rainfall. So if we invest well in irrigation systems, that will be good. So that is on the supply. And the price-related policies, because there would be food, but the prices are far beyond what the common mwananchi can afford. So on price-related policies, I feel that, and which is there, that the National Cereals and Produce Board should continue purchasing maize and other farm produce at higher prices. And this now helps the farmer to get some income and encourage them to continue planting. There's also need to provide subsidy to maize millers, or those who manufacture or process foodstuffs, so that the cost of processing is not high. And that means when now the product gets to the market, that product is affordable. So this can be done. There's also need to ensure that our food reserve is steady. Said they want to have like 18 million bags of maize per year. You know, in most cases in our country, when we have a shortage of maize, that's when now the issues of food insecurity come in. On price-related policies, there's also need to allow importation of tax-free maize, but which does not affect the farmer who has produced. And then we have also policies related to income, because remember that there are those who don't produce, there are those who can't manufacture, but they need the food. So there is need that the government reduces costs, like education costs, health costs. This will dispose of incomes, so that now people can afford, can have some extra coin to access, to purchase food. We have seen for the vulnerables, the aged, for the widows, for the orphans, for people living with disabilities. We have these social protection schemes. It should be enhanced, so that now, at least we have seen during this COVID, the government has come up very well and given out some money to cushion those vulnerable families and those living in slums. We are seeing this Vijana Kazi Mtaani initiative, where now young people in slums, in towns that have slums, are accessing some, they are doing some work to access some income, which now eventually will enable them to get some food. It's important that also going forward and long term, that we have consumers also creating their organizations that can lobby against price, exorbitant price increment. And also we have producers also having their organizations, their associations, so that the associations can help them to market their produce, to add value to their produce, and also bargain so that they don't sell their produce at throwaway prices. We have, if we want also to make people afford access to food, to increase income in their pockets, we have these devolved funds going to the counties, funds going to CDF, funds that are going to youth groups, women. These funds, one, they should increase, and these funds should be released on time, so that now with these funds, people can, there are those who do contracts, there are small manual jobs that are created as a result of this, and therefore people are able to purchase food because they have an income. So for me, I would say that the government of Kenya has very good policies as far as food security is concerned. What we just need is to see these policies implemented, and there's need for a big advocacy, people who can put government on toes, people who can follow up and say, oh, there's this policy, why is it not implemented? There's this, why is it late? If we are procuring fertilizer, why is it coming when we have already planted, or the rains are already, the season is almost ending? So that is my take on food security. I know Bilha is an expert in nutrition, so she was able to tell us about the state of nutrition, especially on the under fives, what is happening to them. And what I may encourage, what I may add on is that we have counties in this country, like Kakamega County, they have some fund that they have been giving to poor women, so that in the first 6-9 months of births, these poor women can afford some milk, some basic needs for their kids. So this is one way of helping families at household level to access, to improve nutrition, and therefore avoid diseases related to malnutrition. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin, for that presentation that specifically delved into the supply-related issues, mainly on policy. And as we move on, maybe one of the things that, Justin, you may want to maybe look at is what are the lessons learned from the experience of COVID-19 for survival of rural communities and the county governments, as much as the situation has been dire. What are the opportunities that, this situation provides? We can hold our questions, then we move on to the next presenter, who is the future, who represents the future of this country. So we now welcome Purity Commander.
Hi,
Purity.
Topista.
Hi, Purity. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay. So my fellow panelists have tackled quite a number of issues to do with nutrition and food security in the country, against the backdrop of what food security is all about and what are because when we talk about food security, there are things that we cannot miss out on talking about, because food security has to do with access, it has to do with availability, it has to do with affordability of these products, it has to do with sustainability, And it also has to do with utilization, because as much as we are eating this food, as much as we are making it accessible, as much as we are making it affordable, is it being utilized by the body in the right way that it needs to be utilized, that it can be of benefit for the body? Because there's really no point in having this food available if it cannot be utilized properly by the body itself, because the purpose of eating is basically to be able to meet the physiological and nutrient needs of this individual at the end of the day. Currently in Kenya, we are now seeing a double burden of malnutrition, in that there has been increased numbers of people who are becoming overweight with time, something that was not there before. This can be contributed to the change in lifestyle that we have seen over the past recent years. And also we have also seen, with the time as it goes, we're also seeing a sudden increase in the number of micronutrient deficiencies, especially among vulnerable groups. These vulnerable groups are mainly children under 5 and women, and also the elderly. We are also seeing a high number of people who are getting non-communicable diseases. And this can also be attributed to nutrition security, because food security and nutrition security go in tandem. You cannot speak of one without missing on the other. So we need to look at all this and be able to come up with solutions on how we can address this. So one of the things that we can do to be able to improve on this is to improve dietary diversity. Kenya currently is known to be a maize-loving country, and it has also been known that maize is the most affordable crop for many people. And this should change, because you find that non-staple things such as beans and vegetables tend to be very affordable, but not many people know that these things are affordable. So you find that a particular family ends up eating a lot of maize, which does not really meet the needs of this family at the end of the day. So we need to change the aspects. We need to change the mindset of people, that there are other foods out there in the market that are available and affordable, easily affordable, cutting across all income groups, from the low income group earner to the high income group earner, who can be able to access these foods that can be able to provide for them all the nutrients that they need at the end of the day. We also need to look at reducing bottlenecks from the concept of farm to fork. You will find that in Kenya currently, there is so much bottlenecks. A farmer will be able to have this produce at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, how does this produce reach the market? You will find there are so many brokers in between. There are so many people who want to come in and be able to be the people who are standing in for the farmers. And what happens because of this, you find that the end product reaching the market becomes too expensive for the consumers at the end of it. So we need to find ways that farmers can be able to sell their produce directly to the consumers. The government should come in with policies that are favorable to farmers, so that they be able to access this market, and we remove the middleman who ends up inflating prices such that the consumers are not able to afford this produce at the end of the day. And you find that we also, as a result of this, even most farmers end up not selling their produce. And what happens? We have a lot of spoilage at the end of the day. And this is food that can be easily sold and easily accessed by people who really need it. So we need to look at aspects such that they are reducing the bottlenecks in between here, so that it's easy for this food to come from farm and easily and affordable directly to fork, which is a consumer at the end of the day. We are also seeing with time that between the years of 2008 to 2014, we have seen the minimum acceptable diets for small children, this is the ages of 6 to 23 months, has reduced from 39% to 31%. So we want to come in and ask ourselves, how are we going to make it affordable or make it accessible for these young babies to be able to have diets that can be able to meet their needs? Because as Bill has said, we are seeing a high level of stunting in some counties. And this is usually the group that is usually affected by this level of stunting. So we want to change, because we know most people or most mothers and caregivers, especially in the Kenyan scene, we are used to a certain diet for our babies. It's mostly a carb-rich diet, which mostly will not be able to give this child what they need at the end of the day. So we need to change this. We need to tell our mothers and our caregivers But there's so much more you can give your babies other than bananas, potatoes, pumpkins. We can give our babies vegetables, we can give our babies protein, that things that will be able to meet their nutrient requirements at the end of the day. We also need to change the cultural mindset of people, especially in the Kenyan scene, where most fruits and vegetables tend to be a preserve either for the rich or a preserve of some people within the community. Because you'll find that it was found out by the Ministry of Health in the year 2015 that only 5.2% of the sampled population at that time met their recommended dietary allowance for fruits and vegetables, which is very low, because the recommended dietary allowance for a healthy human adult is usually 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. So if only 5% of the population is meeting this target, then we need to ask ourselves, what is not happening? Why are our people not eating fruits and vegetables? Are they too expensive? Is it the notion that this is only a preserve maybe for the sick or for women or for children? Because even amongst yourselves, you can ask yourselves, in your household, when was the last time you had a fruit? Even today, have you had your fruit portions for the day? You will find that a lot of us don't tend to meet such things. And these are things we might want to take for granted, but at the end of the day, you find out you're missing out on so much, because fruits and vegetables tend to be high in minerals and vitamins, which we need. As much as they're micronutrients, we need them for physiological functions. We need them also to be able to meet our nutrient needs for the end of the day. Also, we need to look at what are the way forward, especially towards zero hunger and food security in Kenya. And Justin and Bilha have been able to touch on some things, and I'll also just mention some of the things that did not come across. So one, we need to put in better storage and agro-processing procedures that will be able to reduce post-harvest losses. Like we've seen in the past before, where people are having so much, where milk farmers had so much produce, they ended up having to pour that milk, which is milk maybe which would have been produced either to powdered milk and be able to be stored for a longer period. Maybe it's milk that would have been processed to ultra-heated milk, and it can be able to last for longer period than having to have that milk poured. We have seen farmers having a lot of vegetables that they don't know what to do with, they end up rotting. So farmers need to be taught on ways that they can be able to minimize post-harvest losses and embrace ways that they can be able to preserve this food even for longer periods of time, and also preserve them as products by value addition methods that can be able to produce other products that are important to the consumer at the end of the day. We also need to have a multi-sectoral food security and nutrition authority. Kenya has been known to have the best policies, but what happens? We have these committees sitting down, we have these authorities sitting down, coming up with some of the best policies, and these policies are never implemented. And they end up being borrowed by countries who are very good at implementing them. Yet us as the people who came up with these policies never end up implementing them. And we hurt as the citizens of this country. So it's about time we need to look at different ways of doing things, other than just coming up with policies and putting in the shelves where they're gathering dust. We need to change that mindset. We need to look at the policies that have been made. Like, for example, there was a National Nutrition Action Plan, which was only implemented for less than 50%. So we need to look at how we can improve that to be able to implement it even to an acceptable at least 75%. This will end up affecting a lot of people in all the right ways, and we might also just see a number of the levels of malnutrition going down, both overnutrition and undernutrition. We also need to boost the agricultural science and technology. We need to move away from procedures that have been carried out by our great-grandfathers, our grandfathers, and also the current generation. We need to move away from outdated agricultural methods and adopt new methods and technologies that can be able to produce better harvest, and better produce that will end up being of more use and more value to the consumer at the end of the day. We also need to focus on improved nutrition and nutrition education, especially in schools, for the upcoming generation. And this can be easily done through school feeding programs. Yeah, school feeding programs, this is an aspect that has been highly affected, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, because children have been out of school from March up until now, which is 6 months out of school. And especially in the low income earning areas, some of these children, that 1 meal or 2 meals at school could be most of the meals that they get for that day. So through these school feeding programs, we need to embrace it, not just through, even with the COVID-19 pandemic, we can still have these programs going on, in that within a community, we can have these children still going to the school for their meals. So what we need to do, especially now that school feeding programs are devolved down to the constituency level, we need to look at how the CDF can be able to boost some of these school feeding programs and having these children at least getting their meal for the day. And we end up now adjusting the rate of malnutrition, because a random sample has been done by some organization, and we are seeing a high level of malnutrition, especially acute malnutrition during this period. However, this can be tackled if school feeding programs could still be enabled to continue during this COVID-19 pandemic and the uncertainty of when these schools will open, because we are not still sure when these schools will open, but our children still need to be fed. So the constituencies and constituency development committees need to look of how they can adjust their CDF budgets to be able to incorporate school feeding programs into it. We also need to create awareness among our communities, especially among communities in our arid and semi-arid lands. When there's drought and famine, you will find that most of these farmers hold on to their cattle and livestock until they're dying, and yet people are dying, and this produce and this livestock can be used to feed these families that are suffering of famine and drought. So we need to try and adjust them. It will be hard to adjust the mindset of people, but we just need to create awareness. You do not have to hold on to your livestock until they die, yet you yourself, you are at risk of dying of hunger. You can use this livestock to be able to feed your family. You can use this livestock to be able just to prolong your days a little better, rather than sitting on it in the value that you will be able to sell it, or you will be able to be considered the man of the people because you have a certain number of livestock. So we need to create awareness to such communities and enable them to understand what is the importance of, at the end of the day, what is the importance of having a meal rather than having livestock that won't really help you at the end of the day if they end up dying with you without you having to benefit from them. So basically, and we also have to enhance human capital. We make sure that, because Kenya currently is an agriculturally backed economy, and we need to enhance the human capital, especially among this. Our small scale farmers currently are the people who feed a majority of Kenyans currently. So we need to look at ways in which we can improve this human capital. Can we be able to take our farmers for learning so that they can be able to learn about new methods of farming, new methods of preserving their produce at the end of the day, new methods of value addition to their produce at the end of the day. You have a dairy farmer who just knows at the end of the day he's selling milk. What can this dairy farmer do? What kind of value addition can he do to his milk to be able to add an income to himself? Do we need to take him from some yogurt making classes? Do we need to introduce some cheese making classes to such farmers so that they can also be able to have multiple streams of income than just sitting by the roadside with a tin can of milk and even at the end of the day, looking at that income and what he has put to get that can of milk, it's not really balancing. So we need to invest in our farmers at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, food security and nutrition security is in line with the sustainable development goal number 2, which is zero hunger, which is all about ensuring access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food for all. We have to look at ending all forms of malnutrition, either it be overnutrition, undernutrition, and micronutrient deficiencies. We also need to double our agricultural productivity by all the things that I have just mentioned before, and also ensuring this sustainable food production, even when, especially with times we have seen the seasons have been changing. So what are we doing about it? Especially now in the past few years, we have seen the rainy season keeps on changing. So we need to tell our farmers, we need to tell our stakeholders, especially in the agricultural and nutrition sector, that you need to adapt, because if you don't adapt, you'll surely die. Because we're seeing a lot of farmers complaining that the rainy season has not favored us, the rainy season came in late, we didn't plant in time. So we have to tell our farmers, you need to adapt into the changing seasons. Find something that can adapt. Even when it doesn't rain consistently, you have produce in the farm that can be able to be sustained throughout this season. Yep. Then we need to increase our investment in agriculture. You will find that, especially when it comes to financing of agricultural produce and inputs, most financial corporations are not willing to do that, and very few are willing to provide credit to farmers, as Justin mentioned earlier. So we need to increase our investment in agriculture, especially being that Kenya is an agricultural backed economy. So I think with that, I have tried and mentioned everything. So in case there is any question, I think I will hand it back to the moderator for the day. Thank you.
I'm looking at the time there, and the time seems to be almost done, but it was just a quick question. Were you suggesting that the government needs to legislate the diets and menus so that every time we go to a food offered in a public place, it has to follow a certain formula? Is that what you're saying? That's stupidity?
Not necessarily legislating a certain diet. We just need to have an understanding of what are the population needs at the end of the day, because we need to ensure that this population is meeting their needs at the end of the day. So if we create enough awareness, especially to the community, you know that at the end of the day, you need to meet your cereal needs, you need to meet your protein needs, you need to meet fruit and vegetable needs. It should come from, even when you're going to eat out, you know, I am meeting my starch needs, I am meeting my protein needs, I am meeting my fat needs, I am meeting my fruits and vegetables.
Okay, Purity, I just noticed that during this COVID-19, there's been a lot of uptake on vegetables. I think somebody somehow spread a rumor that if you eat vegetables, then the corona will walk away. Do you have some thoughts on this? And this, Bilha can also say something about it, and Justin, because I know we have 3 minutes. But yeah, do you think maybe if we can align the fact that food is not just filling the belly, but there's a health aspect to it? Any comment, any thoughts?
Yes, food has physiological functions, and these physiological functions are things like improving immunity of the body. That's why we had an upsurge of people buying lemons, ginger, garlic, and all that, because fruits improve immunity, and actually even protein improves immunity of food. That's why we have to look at food not just for satisfaction, not just for satiety. We need to look at the physiological function itself. Which one of them is improving immunity? And that's why we had that upsurge of vegetables and fruit intake, especially during the COVID-19.
Maybe Bilha could add something, and then Justin will drop in maybe a government approach. And I see Topista is back. Then we hand over back to Topista to conclude the session. Bilha.
I'd like to top up on what Purity has said. Purity has given us quite great insight. And we have moved out of, because of the economic status of Africa, we have moved away from having a balanced diet where you must have a protein, vegetable, whatever, on one plate. However, whatever constitutes what you've eaten from the day starts, from the time the day starts, the time the day ends, that is what can constitute your diversity of food groups. So as she has put it, it is important for nutrition education to be given to the public. So
okay. Bilha, we are losing,
because even
Bilha,
the
we are losing you.
Oh, sorry.
We are losing you, but a quick follow-up to that point. So should we design special plates, one section for nyama, for mboga, for garlic, for eggs? I saw that in Rwanda.
Not necessarily so, because as I've said, data diversity has to do with what you've consumed for a 24-hour period. So if you walk along the way and get a mapera and eat, you have eaten a vitamin. When you chew cane, you have taken a carbo. When you get to the house and eat groundnuts before you take your main meal, you have eaten a nut. So it may not necessarily require, because of the economic status of our people, to ensure that they have all those food groups on a plate. But whatever you may consume from the start of day to the end of day, that is what can actually constitute a dietary diversity for an individual.
Okay, thank you, Bilha. And just as you spoke there, responding to James's question about having portions of this and that on the plate, what I see families, those who can, have moved to, is to do a whole menu for a week, so that they design a menu that says on Monday we'll have this, on Tuesday we'll have this, and pin it somewhere. I don't know then what your suggestions are, including what you are just going to say. Bilha?
Oh, thank you, Madam Topista. It is quite good to do that, because for sure, if you have the nutrition education on what you need to consume, you can plan it over a week if you can, if it is available for you. But for those who may not be able to, but are eating per chance and are able to gather something from all the food groups, that will still serve them well. Now, in addition, I think I wanted to also talk about enhanced extension services, because we find that our food may be crop-based or animal-based. And our field extension workers need to really come up, and our community health volunteers need to come up very strongly to encourage members of the community to grow these crops, because during this COVID-19 period, I think so many people have maximized on the time. For those who may have lost jobs and were in the rural areas, or the teachers who are not on duty, or other people, they were able to sit down and utilize their farms very well, and enhance their crop enterprises, their poultry enterprises. And this, if it be encouraged then and becomes a part and parcel of people's lives, then for sure we shall have a food secure country. Thank you.
And the opportunities that this challenging period also presents. And I think that also has been touched on, looking at improving of the agricultural services, nutrition. But also what I also see is that going back to and what the ministry has done is reviving indigenous foods. Was that also discussed? We know that there are certain foods, indigenous foods, that are at risk of being, wiped out for now. I can't hear you. I can see you talking, James. Maybe you want to.
Topista, and thank you, everybody. I think Justin, his contribution, and Purity and Bilha. This is a conversation that is ongoing. As you notice, we set this festival for 2 days. We already are almost done with day one. I'd like to invite everybody to join us in the final panel that we're going to have the food tourism guru from United States. In the US, they use a big word, gastro-tourism. I think Kenya, we like simple English, so we say food tourism. So we are expecting, and I think she's quite ready, Dr. Helena Williams, who is a gastro-tourism guru that consults widely Asia, Europe, US, Latin America. And we are so much honored that she's woken up very early, because in the US now it's in the morning. And so she's going to be our keynote speaker this evening. And I would like to thank Purity for her contribution. Bilha, who also helped the Interregion Economic Network set up the whole idea of Chakula Chetu. For those who don't know, it's Bilha that was part of this, the production of this nice Chakula Chetu book, which is actually winning an award now. So I really thank you for that. And Justin Tobera, although I can't see him, but he's also been quite helpful in the IREN field group. I know he works with our team in Butere, Purity and Catherine. And of course, Topista, who has always been with us in the production of radio, Innovate and on kwa Kiswahili, Buni, Umiliki. So, and all of you, thank you so much. Let us now prepare for the keynote address that starts in the next 10 minutes. Thank you.